it's it isn't fully understood. You know, Senator Murkowski worked really hard to bring this infrastructure bill to Alaska, and it's in limbo right now. And there's possibly, as everybody in the funding organizations know, there's possibly enough sewer and water funding coming to Alaska, if that's approved, that Stephen will see pipes in his lifetime. And the thing that I believe we're talking about with Flushing Hall and Pass is just that time between now and then. How do we get services that aren't a waste of money, that are the best use until we get to pipes? We've been working with ANTHC and Village Safe Water and any of the funders that will listen and let them know that we're aware of this potential money and we want to help our 20 communities align themselves to be funded as soon as possible. And that means they have to be tier 1 funded. They have to be at the top. And all those little things like they were talking about, RUBA scores and best practice scores and all those things that disqualify people from getting to the top or getting those projects funded. We have to be aware of those because those are the rules. And we have to align ourselves so that when the funding is made available, we get the funding. So I hope this bill passes, and I hope we get to see those pipes sooner than later. We're working really hard right now with Village Safe Water for pipes in Tanunik, Kipnuk, with ANTHC, and even little things, little projects. If the villages themselves take ownership of the process, whether it's the RUBA scores or whatever, even though those RUBA scores or best practice scores don't make any sense a lot of times, it's what we got to work with. So that Flushing Hall system is not great. And the provider of that product put some things in place so that that provider is the only person that can give them products. And it's unfortunate because things are very expensive, very costly that way. And as the funders and as the organizations make these new products available, whether it's Pass or whatever it might be, hopefully they'll take that into account so we don't get locked into these agreements where a village now has to work with the manufacturer and pay that high rate and they can't do it for themselves or whatever. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. I don't think it's the fact that villages will never see pipes. It's really expensive. And unfortunately with those affordability matrix rules, even though we prove that $150 is affordable, the funders won't accept that because of the matrix, the way it's set up. And until that's changed, even though in Bethel, people may pay $200 a month for water, it's too much for our villages, and that's not right. So we're working on those things as well to get those affordability standards and matrix changed as a rule to funding. And with this new potential funding that's coming, those rules don't apply. There's enough funding to bring sewer and water to every village in Alaska if that bill passes, is what I
Thanks for bringing that up, Bob, because as I understand it, you're absolutely right. The funding that is represented in the proposed infrastructure bills, we call it, and is sitting in the House, would fund all the unmet needs in Alaska as we have it documented. Obviously, you still have process and procedure, you have design, you have a lot of things that represent a time frame between even the point where that funding would be provided to the time that you would actually get the system in place. But that removes a huge hurdle that has been, impossible to overcome in the past. And as you said, then you still have to have the communities prepared and ready to accept that service and be able to maintain it and finance it. But what you mentioned, by the way, might be something we could take a little detour here and have Brent or at least Brent give us a update on what do we have as far as centralized systems being built in the region right now, and what is planned or being designed, which could take advantage of this future money as it comes forward. Is there anything you want to add, Brent, on what we're doing as far as centralized systems?
This is Corbin with ANTHC. I want to jump in because Kipnook's one of my communities, and we've been working, like Bob said, with CVRF to have our ducks in a row, which means an approved PER and those sort of steps, so that we can apply for that funding in Kipnook. And so that is one of the top projects slated.
So when you say PER, you meaning preliminary engineering?
Yeah, there was one developed a few years back for comprehensive pipe service in Kipnook. It was not approved by the state due to the cost of operating it. The monthly cost to residents was too high. So we are working with CVRF to remedy that and some other issues that the review committee came up with. And once that's done, that one, like I said, should be one of the top ranked projects for the comprehensive pipe system. So that's the one I can answer to for my communities, but I'll let Brent bring up any more that he may have.
Yeah, well, similarly, so for Napaskiak, for about the last 2 years, I've been working closely with the city and with the tribe to find out what their priorities are in the community. And I'm aware that one of their top priorities is getting a fully piped system. But as we've talked about, there's limitations in attaining that funding. So knowing that the community has wanted to replace their water treatment plant because it's collapsing. And I've acknowledged that as one of the top priorities for the region, because once that central watering point collapses, they'll be without a water source. And so I've essentially worked with the city and the tribe, going through a preliminary engineering report, looking at different alternatives and options that we are able to fund in the lack of USDA and state funding. So we can only rely upon IHS funding. It's the only source that we have right now. And so we were able to come up with a solution that's within the budget that's available to us. And the engineering report has attained approval from the city and tribe of Napaskiak. And it's very likely that that'll get funded for design and construction in this next cycle. I think it's ranked like 7th of the 2.
I think we must have lost Brent, at least temporarily. Anyone else? Can anybody hear me? Okay, all right, so good. Okay.
I could add a comment unless Brent wants to speak first.
I think we've lost him temporarily at least, so go ahead, Fatima.
Okay. So yes, I am not a village safe water engineer, so I can't give you exact information about PRs or plans for pipes in the community and how they would benefit from the infrastructure bill that Democrats and the President Biden are trying to push forward. But like I say, if you have any burning questions, I can pass them on, and I have engineers on messaging and I can get answers. But one comment I was going to add related to this infrastructure bill and hopefully this great influx of funding that we will be receiving if it's approved. And there would be no caps or no real metrics to limit villages' eligibility for pipes. Something I guess that we could also discuss or think about is vision or strategy, because as Mike, you pointed out, it takes a long time from the moment the president says, okay, the infrastructure bill is approved and there will be funds dispersed, to the moment an actual village resident turns on the tap at home, right? Years will pass. So one thing to think about is there are only so many engineering firms or consulting firms that put together this preliminary engineering plans, which is sort of a study of what type of water system a community could receive, how much it would cost, and all that. And it takes months for that to be completed. There's also another thought that if all villages at once want pipes, we may have limitations in terms of staffing, engineer staffing at ANTHC as well as Village Safe Water, to respond as quickly as possible to meet those requests for pipes. So I guess this may be a good forum to discuss how the region could start thinking strategies and vision for how to be prepared to accommodate that so that the region can benefit.
That's an excellent point, and I could tell you that ANTHC has had these conversations recently about if the funding does come in place, there will be a bottleneck in getting enough engineers and construction individuals together to actually be able to move ahead. So that may be an economic opportunity, frankly, for firms or organizations within the region or within the state.
Exactly.
And that's something that people ought to be thinking about. Obviously, we are doing our best to try to recruit as many qualified individuals as we can in anticipation that the infrastructure bill actually will pass. We will all be in Village Safe Water and ANTHC will be in the same position. There's no doubt. There'll be a lot of subcontracting, I'm assuming. There will be a real premium on people who actually understand how to build in the Arctic. So that's all going to be part of that future that we see ahead of us.
Yeah, and it's good to have villages on this call so that they understand what's behind the scenes of getting these infrastructure projects completed in their communities. Like you say, it could be a great economic opportunity for the region. As you know, we are a state agency. We don't provide private services. We go out into the marketplace and we hire construction firms to complete the job. And because we might face that bottleneck, I'm not saying this will happen, but in order to respond quickly to communities that want pipes right away, maybe they would open up the bidding process to engineering firms outside of Alaska. And we know in the past that has happened quite a bit, and they don't know, as you say, they don't know exactly what things would work best in terms of construction, Arctic engineering or Arctic construction. So yeah, that's something to think about. I think it would be a good opportunity if the region could come up with ideas to provide those private services.
Right. Okay, so I think we as a group can certainly look forward to the lining, or the silver lining of the infrastructure bill. The question will be, how do we implement once we've received all those resources. And that will be something we need to continue to engage with the community and in forums just like this, how we can best address that. I guess one of the things, if we have covered what we needed to cover here on the sanitation area, I'm wondering if it's time, Heather, to move on to our housing issues, or how would you like to do this?
Well, if we can just pause for one moment, I've been trying to, as we've been having the conversation, first of all, apologies. I meant to have been recording this from the beginning so that we have a record of the discussion for note-taking purposes and whatnot. And it slipped my mind at the very beginning, so I started midway, and I apologize for the announcement that interrupted the conversation. Secondly, I'm wondering, when we last met to talk about this first action plan was around these what were called toilet implementation projects, and I'm wondering if we should change that to a sanitation system, or change the wording, because it's not only toilets. There's, as we said, the pass system includes a water component, and I believe that VSW has other projects that, aside from the one toilet pilot project. Do we want to broaden that? We've also broadened that discussion to now talk about pipe systems, which actually is part of task B, although task B combines the housing with the pipe system. So I think that's a great lead in for the next task. I just want to confirm what we want to keep for the, I don't know if we're calling it on-site sanitation systems or non.
I think on-site is an adequate description of and on-site sanitation and on-site sanitation and water. Either, VSW has, and for many years have been developing some prototypes on recycling systems that would be able to reuse water. Now, those are still in development. And the separating toilet idea is really a way of addressing just the sanitation issue and improving the honey bucket situation, if you will, where the pass system it doesn't pretend to try to recycle water. It basically just uses treated or untreated water that can, through that system, be potable, and then deals with the sanitary. So, but either way, it's an individual home solution to the existing situation. It's not the solution, it is a partial solution, and it is more affordable, therefore it can be implemented quicker, and it doesn't have all the requirements of a centralized system such as best practice scores and so forth. So it is more available. And certainly in Bob's case, where if CVRF is building homes and you don't have access to the centralized system, then these types of solutions may be available to you, or anyone else building a home that's out and separated from the system. So, but I do agree, we need to include in this conversation certainly centralized systems, because that's going to be available, and it is available to some places right now to deal with homes. Anyway, hopefully that's not confusing, but anyway.
No, I think that is helpful. And, we'll leave the notes for the centralized systems for now, and then hopefully we can talk about that in integrated with the housing discussion. I also just want to confirm, do we have a sense of clear next steps for each of these tasks? So, reading between the lines for the first one, I kind of drafted, and you'll see it highlighted there, maybe communities can contact ANTHC and or VSW if they're interested in improved systems. And then each of the ANTHC and VSW are gearing up for potential influx of funding to be able to make more improvements in systems throughout the communities.
Yeah, and I think both organizations, VSW and ANTHC, could update where we are as far as projects going in, because it's changed from the last time we had a conversation in December, and it continues to change. So I think it's important for both organizations to be continually updating that and providing it to the region. Because I'm sure, as was talked about, you know, we know that in Kotlik's case that we've got a preliminary engineering report being done. And so anyway, these kind of updates need to come in to and be incorporated in this CEDS planning effort on a continual basis.
I have a quick update on the water and sewer project, which is the water reuse, on-site water reuse system or prototype that we have developed. They will be testing the prototype with actual human beings on campus this coming this winter. They're gearing up to get there. It's a group led by a professor based off of University of Alaska Anchorage. They will be replumbing a townhouse style dorm, university dorm, with students that will be tracking the workings of the system and their interactions with the water. Water will be reused from bathroom sinks, showers, and washing machines, clothes washers. For those same fixtures. It did take several years to move to get the EPA approval to actually conduct this testing with human subjects, because as you can imagine, there's always risk in research, and something can go wrong with the system, but we have a pretty good plan to make sure nothing wrong will happen. So we'll see how that goes. They will be running the system testing for a year. And from that point, sometime in 2023, we will know where we can test next. And by that, I mean a hub, like a regional hub, somewhere closer to a village. An on-site water reuse is not for everyone. We understand that not everyone will feel comfortable recycling water at home. So this is not something that we plan to force upon any community. When we get to that point, we'll conduct more public outreach on this project than we have up to this point.
Okay, very good. Moving on. So here we talk about what's being done to create a partnership or a funding model that can leverage funds to construct homes and the appropriate water and sewer systems. I think the last time we had a conversation, CVRF obviously is continuing to try to address the housing shortage, and with different models, I believe. But and then of course you have the Housing Authority trying to address housing shortages. One of the things that I wanted to bring to the group's attention was an effort that we've made in partnership with Cold Climate Housing Research Center on trying to maximize the health benefits, or let's say minimize, I would guess, the health concerns of overcrowded housing and and the existing housing stock, if you will, and how builders and designers of new housing, what items might they need to be aware of as far as addressing what could become a health hazard to the occupants. And this is something that I had been talking with some of the housing authorities about. Obviously, we have had a program at ANTHC for a few years now called the Healthy Homes Program. It had first addressed things such as the use of wood stoves in homes that had had a unhealthy level of particulate level matter in the air that had resulted in infants being hospitalized in the YK area, actually. Well, this kind of developed further into what things do we need to be aware of when we're building homes, including sanitation. And I wonder if I could invite Haley Nelson to give us a little update on a project that we've been doing to try to identify some of those issues. Are you there, Haley?
I am, yes. And I don't know if it's possible, but I have some, I can share my screen if that's possible and just show kind of some of the summary slides from what we've been working on. Awesome.
Sure. I just stopped sharing, so you should be able to share now.
Oh, I'm having a problem sharing. Hold on one second. I have it saved over here. Sorry, stand by. Might log in with a different browser if that's all right.
Yeah, I can't help you with anything technology related, I can tell you that.
I can barely help myself. I'm gonna try and log in from a different window. Oh, perfect, okay.
Yes, I appreciate everyone's patience if you ended up hanging out in the waiting room, and I'm trying to monitor a number of different things at the same time, so.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So yeah, like Mike said, this is an effort that we've been working on here at CCHRC with ANTHC. And I'm gonna pull up just some notes I had. So yeah, we've been working on this, or the impetus for this project really came out of kind of an awareness that ANTHC and CCHRC have that there are many different decision makers involved in a housing project that can make decisions which end up impacting occupant health and safety with the end product, and oftentimes without necessarily realizing it, because the connection to the health and safety outcome is not always intuitive when you're making a decision way upstream. So the idea here with this project is that the more information we can distribute to the decision makers of housing projects, the more familiarity they can have with various topics, the better the health and safety outcomes can be. And especially like we've been talking about today with the infrastructure bill right around the corner, it's going to be important that we're proactive about getting this information into the hands of decision makers, because there's potentially going to be a lot of new organizations going after funding who maybe don't have the experience working in rural Alaska, especially. And even for organizations who have worked on rural housing projects for years, you know, we all have blind spots, even us. So that's kind of the background for this. And so the first step with this project was ANTHC and CCHRC got together and kind of brainstormed a list of really common health and safety considerations that come up in the housing projects that we've worked on in the past. And I'll go through that list in just a second. But the second step, once we kind of had that long list, was grouping them into some main categories, which we have here. So, you know, there's site and material considerations that are important to consider, especially early on. So what is unique about the site, where the housing project's going to take place, what are the assets, the deficits, the hazards, what's the weather going to be like, what are the seasons like, are there natural disasters, are they expecting, you know, a relocation, things like that are very important. And then considering, you know, how well material choices you might make are going to be, how compatible are they with that site? Like if it's a very wet place, that's probably going to change some of the material decisions that you make. Or if there's permafrost. Working with communities, you know, that's a big one we've seen over and over again, you know, with especially, you know, big federally funded projects that aim to get a lot of housing in at once. There's a long history all over Alaska of designs for housing kind of being copy pasted from maybe more urban environment designs or lower 48 designs kind of being just pasted into a place without taking into consideration the unique cultures of that place, lifestyles, long-term housing needs and preferences. So that's a big one that really ends up impacting health and safety over time if the housing is not meeting, you know, the basic unique needs of its occupants. That's a problem. So then of course, indoor air quality is a big one for Alaska. That's some of our, you know, respiratory health statistics in the state are really concerning, as ANTHC is very, very familiar. You know, especially with, you know, Native Alaskan children, I think the rates are, you know, among the worst in the United States. And that a lot of that has to do with indoor air quality, so which has connections to mold and indoor pollutants. Overcrowding can cause some indoor air quality issues, all sorts of things. And then of course, like we've been talking about today in depth, water and sewer systems are huge. You know, sanitation is very fundamental to health and safety in the long term, and making sure that you have adequate water and sewer systems is pretty non-trivial, especially in rural places. So those are kind of that's the category breakdown. And we have a number of topics that break out from there that we've identified as being, you know, particularly important to consider at all stages. I won't go into all these topics. I'll just kind of give you mile-high view, but just so you can take a look of the things that came out of this. And I'll disclaim this project too. We're still more or less in draft mode, so this is not necessarily a finished product. So if things stand out to you as being missing, we would love to hear that. But so from there, we took this information and tried to tease out some information that can be especially useful to the decision makers. And so, you know, part of that is what expertise are you going to want in your design process to help you ensure that you're, you know, considering each of these topics comprehensively and in depth. So what expertise are you going to want for different areas? And what kind of extra information are you going to want to make sure that you have for your process? So things like geotechnical reports, design charrettes with the community, combustion safety tests. What's that extra information that you might have to commission or request? Stuff that doesn't automatically fall out of the process. You kind of have to consciously work it in. And then from there, we go into specific topics, and I'll just pick one here that's kind of a good example. So for each topic, we cover a couple things. So the first is just an overview definition for whoever's reading it. Just what are we talking about? What is this what is this topic and how is it relevant in construction? So some of these have more detail than others, but we also cover, what is the health and what is the specific health and safety impact that this topic has in construction? Like, where does it come up? How do decisions you make about this around this topic show up in the final product as like a health and safety issue? So just getting that overview for people right away. And then we break it out into what are best practices for each of, if you're in one of these roles, if you're a housing authority, if you're a designer, or if you're a contractor, what is within your, what responsibilities fall under your role for considering this topic actively? What do you have power over in the housing project process to ensure that this topic is being considered? And that's different, of course, for each of these categories, but we tried to be specific without being too in the weeds with it. So we give a lot of very particular examples, but also try to keep it general. So that's the basic structure of this document. And like I said, we're still kind of in the drafting phase, but this is the content of information that we're working to provide. So if you have any questions for me or for Mike.
So this is something that you can share, I assume. So I don't know, Heather, if you would get a copy of it or how it would be shared. But anyway, that gives us, thank you for that. That is an excellent overview, and I'm looking forward to seeing the more detail. Now, obviously, our concern at ANTHC was because we had seen health impact from what we all everybody here understands is a overcrowded housing stock and with a lot of issues regarding air quality and other things. And that's really what that was trying to address. The whole issue of building more homes. And Bob, I think maybe I should ask you, because CVRP has certainly been identified as someone or an organization trying to address that issue. What kind of updates can you give us? And also the ABCP housing, if they're online, or any other home building initiatives that we are aware of?
Okay, well, I've got kind of a packaged type presentation that we put together that's, I don't know, 7 or 8 slides. I think it's not huge. And then it might tease out some questions. We've made a lot of changes and progress because it's relatively new way of thinking to try to privatize this process and kind of empower people to take ownership of all of it while still leveraging that funding from state and federal organizations that are tasked and have missions to do it, including ourselves. So dancing that dance and getting people to sign up and take that risk and do it was really tough in the beginning, but it's got a lot of traction, a lot of momentum right now. Tribes have got some money right now. They've got some rescue funding that a lot of them are wanting to do the right thing with. And we've had several tribes reach out and say, hey, how do you help us make the best use of this money? So we've made a real big effort to look at that, just kind of like we talked about sewer and water. What's the best use for our resources and time to help align these communities? So when this money is available, if it does become available, or even if it doesn't, to align themselves for services. So that's kind of And we got involved in sewer and water because it's a big part of housing. You know, when you were talking about that title about sewer and water, to us, a lot of things that's often said by the funders, because they're the ones that, you know, they dictate whether you're going to get a loan to do this housing thing or not. They use something called to the village standard. So when they talk about sewer and water, they'll lend on it if what we're building is to the village standard. So if the village standard is pump and haul or pass or honey bucket or pipes, that's what we have to build to in order to get funding. So I just threw that out there, but Kira has a real quick PowerPoint presentation that I can talk to if it's okay, and she can share her screen.
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
So real quick, if you guys can bear with me, I have to explain who we are so that people have an understanding a little bit about where the money comes from. So next slide, please. So CVRF is the CDQ group, and CDQ, we make all our money. We don't get any funding from any organizations. So in order to provide benefit, in order to pay me and our staff and everybody that works hard to put these program dollars back into our villages, we fish offshore and we take those profits and those proceeds and we put them back into our villages in the way of programs and direct employment to people. Next slide, please. Some of the things we offer our programs, like this rural housing program, we do a lot of vocational training. In my department, I have over 50 employees, and it's kind of an on-the-job training vocational program where we provide services. We have certified welders, ATV repair, automotive repair, snow machine repair. We work on Toyo stoves. We've been certified by the rural energy 2 or 3 times. We've started 3 Honda warranty service centers logistically placed around the region to try to cover as many villages as possible so they don't have to send their machines back to a hub to have them a warranty item fixed. And in that process of all these employees, we've done this management training. We have about, I don't know, 9 or 10 regional managers that help us manage in region, along with all the other benefits you see, youth to work, scholarships, internships, funeral assistance, elder program, heating oil, tax assistance, and designated fund. Those are some of the things that we do with the money that we make and put back into the villages. And we have to try to do it fairly too. The next slide is just a kind of an infomercial, a little quick video that we did when we started tiny houses. Can you run that please, Kira?
There is a crisis in our communities. Many of our homes are molding, falling apart, and are typically overcrowded, causing unsafe living conditions.
They're drafty, they're moldy.
There's about 8, 9, 10 people still living with family.
It's pretty stressful. It isn't getting any smaller, it's getting bigger and bigger.
They cost too much to heat, wasting hundreds of dollars per year in heating oil.
1 drum of stove oil for about 1 week.
With our current housing programs, we can't keep up with our growing communities, and who knows when these programs will be cut.
You know, we've been applying for ABCP housing, but we wouldn't get selected.
We need a sustainable solution addressing our needs and providing for our people. That's what we've been working on. The tiny house program is designed to help qualified buyers purchase a home. CBRF helps residents navigate the lending process and take advantage of all assistance and funding sources.
An individual can obtain a home for far less than what it costs the person to bring in the materials, build it.
I really do like how they are built from the ground on up. They're very well insulated.
Sit piles are energy efficient, fast to put up, don't have to mess with the insulation. It's all enclosed really good, keeps the heat in.
This program features scalable, affordable, and energy-efficient homes that can be built by people in our communities, providing jobs and saving residents money.
People who need jobs, it gives them employment for the summer.
Like this project, they hired a couple locals to do it.
CBRF is offering up to 30% down payment assistance to buyers through People Propel.
I'm not thinking for this community only, I'm thinking of 20 villages. I know it's going to be a blessing.
I can take my life in my own hands, becoming independent even inside of CBAC.
They're very excited to finally move into a bigger place, move around and have their own room.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much. I'm just grateful for this opportunity.
Big things have small beginnings. For more information, call CBRF People Propel or visit coastalvillages.org.
Okay, next slide, please. So a couple things I wanted to comment on. Two things that that I need to say about that video is, one, we started out with tiny houses because we had to prove that mortgages were possible, that people would actually sign up for a home loan. And the only way to do that was to build something that was affordable. And the cost of things are the cost of things. You can't change that. So we had to build a little house. And we found out real quick that mortgages were possible and people were willing to sign up, but they wanted the standard 4-bedroom AVCP house. They wanted a regular size house that was suited to their family size. And the other comment that gentleman made about signing up for AVCP housing for years and never getting selected, that was really meant to say that there's just not enough funding. You get everybody lines up for a house and you only have enough funding and it's never going to be enough to go around. So it wasn't a shot at the housing authority. It was just to put it out there that there's just not enough. And this is just an alternative. And this process really complements the housing authority. They've got a big audience and we've got a slightly different audience, same people, but there are people who can take out a loan that do work and that can apply. And the more we do this and the more we leverage additional resources, we're going to be able to reach the entire audience too. And I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end, because leveraging down payment assistance programs like BIA, and CBRF created one called People Propel. It's really not a housing assistance program, but we created it as part of this effort to show that mortgages can be possible if we make them affordable. Next slide, please. So this is our current infomercial that we put out to our audience, to the people that live in our villages. And this is quick, it's 30 or 90 seconds.
Coastal Villages, a rural housing program, provides opportunity for people to take ownership of their own housing needs. How does it work? Our staff will connect you to the loan programs best suited to residents in rural communities. CBRF offers a 30% down payment assistance to help residents qualify for home loans. BIA offers an additional 30% down payment assistance to tribal members who qualify, and our staff has all the information to help you apply. Once pre-approved, you can now select the house design that fits your needs and budget. Work with your local tribe or village corporation for land to build your new home. CDRF staff will help explain contractor and lender requirements for site control, lendable title, and utilities. This alternative housing approach to home ownership is a pathway to economic prosperity and community development in our region. People taking ownership of their own housing needs is the first step to economic empowerment and self-determination. A CVR housing representative can answer any questions and explain the step-by-step process to participate in this homeownership program. Simply call 1-888-983-7155. Comfortable, dependable, and affordable homes available in all 20 of our communities.
Okay, next slide, please. So we went to GVAC. We built 3 homes, 2 tiny homes and 1 standard 3-bedroom home in 2019. And we teased out all the lenders' problems, all the land problems, and everything I thought that we needed to do to make this a seamless process. We held a community meeting in 2020 in Tuksuk, and in that meeting, we're able to identify 5 residents that were willing to go out and take home loans and work with us to design a home. So we purchased, shipped, and built those home packages this year. We arrived, and on inspection of 3 of the 5 sites, they weren't buildable. You know, even though they conveyed land and it was subdivisions made available for housing, the soil just didn't allow for that. But because this community was they really had their stuff together. The tribe, the city, and the corporation worked really quickly together. And we surveyed another area. We made lots available, and we were able to pivot and get those folks on track. We're finishing up 2 homes this year. The other 3 will start next summer. And it's a very, very successful project, and it's allowed us to even take another step forward as we move forward into 2022. Next slide, please. Just a couple of snapshots from the houses in Tuksuk. They're all, they're still small, affordable houses, but they're bigger. They're 4-bedroom homes. Next slide, please. These are the 2 that'll be finished, and we'll close on the loans hopefully here at the end of November. COVID and everything else throw a few curve balls in there and make it a little bit more difficult, but we manage because that local force there just keeps getting it done. So here's the opportunity that I wanted to talk about, and that we were able to realize was possible as we move through this process in Kipnuk. This American Rescue Funding threw another element out there. Now the tribe has got monies that they're able to do things with for infrastructure, and housing is one of those. So since we were doing it and we were there, they said, hey, what can you build for us for this amount of money? And we came up with this idea of, let's take a strategic approach, building in region in a really, really small envelope of time. If you take on 10 homes at once, it's a very difficult undertaking. So we thought, okay, let's do 3 homes a year for 3 years and see what we can do. And that's kind of what we developed here. We developed a plan with the tribe and said, if you do 3 homes a year and we help you leverage as many resources as possible, and you still have people go out and take home loans, we can make these home loans really, really affordable. And we can take that money and put it back into your building reserve account and do it again the next year. So instead of building 3 homes with $1 million, they can build 10 homes with $1 million just by leveraging the resources and having homeowners take out a home loan for a small amount and make them an affordable mortgage. So next slide. And to make that just real simple, a family signs up for a home, a 4-bedroom home, cost delivered and built somewhere around $350,000. We work with them to get the help, and the help is the down payment assistance that's out there. So if we can get them to qualify and apply and qualify for BIA, coastal villages, and the tribe were to also put some of their rescue funding as down payment for that family, they would only have about $100,000 mortgage. And a $100,000 mortgage with the USDA 502 direct loan will result in about a $400 a month payment in a 5-star, 5-star plus energy efficient home. And most people are paying that much in energy right now in a 1 or 2-star home. So it's affordable and it's possible. And I think that's when people ask us, what are our next steps? That is where we're trying to go, is trying to find as many partners and leverage that mortgage and get it down so that everybody who's willing to can afford to do that. Next slide, please. Something that's relatively new was brought forward to us by Azara, who I'd met on a trip that we partnered up with ABCP, and we went into EEC and we worked on a house project together with BIA, ABCP, and Coastal Villages. And in that trip, I met Azara, and she has now since moved on to the National Guard. And she brought to light this training program that offers basically free labor. So in our model, that 3-year model, in our 3rd year, once we have a tribe that's willing to sign up for it, we're going to try to build a program with the National Guard to come in and build that last 4 houses, that last year of housing, and they won't be any cost for the labor. So those last 4 homes could potentially be free homes. So you have that audience of people that just won't qualify. They don't have the money. This reaches that audience. And this program with the National Guard, and they've got several programs that Azura can talk about a little bit more if she has a minute or time to elaborate a little more, that are available to multiple organizations in Alaska. And I think that's all I had. I don't know if Azura, you want to comment a little bit more on the IRT stuff?
Yeah, just really quickly, with those of us who are familiar with IRT, IRT is not just about homes. In Kodiak every year, IRT goes to bring healthcare, dental, vision, and veterinary services to sweep both Kodiak and the surrounding islands. What I like about Bob's model is, as this timeline shows, there is a 2-year gap between the proposal and then when ground breaks. So you really have to have a lot of forethought and planning if you are going to be integrating IRT into this. Oh, sorry, Kira, there was, I think, one more slide there, if you wouldn't mind bringing it back up. But essentially, what brought this program to my attention in terms of housing was that our Alaska National Guardsmen conducted their 2-week annual training on Cherokee Nation to build homes for veterans. And they came to me saying, we know that there is a huge housing crisis in rural Alaska. We went down to Cherokee Nation and built homes for veterans there. And we did it a lot better than the other National Guard units because they were used to working in the weather. It started raining and they immediately propped up something to cover their work area, and they got done days before any of the other units. So they're very proud of their abilities. They have experience doing this. They recognize the need for it in rural Alaska. And it's just about putting in that proposal, which I haven't seen anyone do really in Alaska. Kodiak and Old Harbor are taking advantage of the IRT program extensively. Old Harbor has a runway extension project. They've been utilizing IRT for 6 years. At one point, they were trying to get buffalo shipped up from Seattle when FedEx failed them. So IRT has a wide range of possibilities. Like I said, our units in Alaska are required to have 2-week annual trainings, and they could go do that in Hawaii, where they get nice sun. But a lot of our units recognize the needs of rural Alaska, and actually recently the General of the Alaska National Guard is requiring that all annual trainings are conducted in Alaska. So that gives us a better opportunity to have our proposals completed by Alaskan units. And the advantage for the military in this is that they learn to operate in an Arctic environment. And as everyone knows, we're switching from desert operations to Arctic. So we need to get more experience in the Arctic. And this is a great way to do this while leaving lasting impacts in our communities around infrastructure.
Any questions? You know, I know that we used years ago the IRT in the efforts to move homes over into the Nelson Island from Newtok at the new home site. We were using IRT units from outside the state, which is interesting that you've got National Guard participation. That's quite good. We were basically using that as the community of Newtok and the McTarvik site, the News Village site, was using IRT to build roads basically there. But they've had participation in the state in other roles. This is the first time I've heard of it being used for home building, but it's an excellent idea.
Sorry, one more thing to add. In conversations with the units, it sounds like building homes and repairing homes are just as feasible. So that's also a possibility.
So anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a comment towards Bob's presentation. You know, it's a very good presentation. It just addresses the 1/3 population of this delta. 2/3 is still yet to be, you know, accounted for and resolved. And I do have, and it's impressive that they're building a $350,000 home with 4 bedrooms. 6 or 7 years ago, I got a home from AVCP, and they took out a mortgage disclaimer deal, and they told me this is a $500,000 home, $550,000 in that neighborhood. So that's amazing that they're able to do that and addressing 1/3 of the housing needs. You know, I know just a little has been addressed since AVCP's inception, but they still have a lot to do. And as for the air issue, home, you know, the air quality issue and the wood stove issue, I'm pretty sure majority of you or some of you watch This Old House or those programs. And we're in this day and technology where they have HVAC, where they clean out the air and use the air outside to heat the homes. is there any way there can be a pilot project within our region that can address the air issue? Because even this home's practically brand new, I'm already seeing mold, and we clean and spray. I think it would be beneficial if an HVAC system comparable to cold Michigan weather, it can be done in Alaska too. And I kind of don't agree with the wording he used to village standard. You know, it should be above and beyond standard that we try to address these issues. And one issue I have with ABCP is the land they selected. I live on a marsh, and we're raining, and it's nonstop. I live in a pool of puddle, and I've tried to bring this up to their attention. And I hope somebody from ABCP Housing is listening, because they need to work with whoever owns the land and select better land, so they want the future people who are getting homes won't encounter the very issue I have. Thank you.
So I invite anyone to respond to that. One of the things that was brought up is the HVAC systems. And I don't know if anybody's still on from cold climate, but I know that the Housing Research Center has certainly worked quite a bit on air quality issues in homes and how we can improve that. I don't know. I'd invite anybody from cold climate to respond to that.
Yeah, hi, this is Haley from CCHRC. So yeah, it sounds like what you're describing is really similar to a system that CCHRC developed a while ago. It's called the Breathe system, and it combines the ventilation system with the heating system. So it's fresh air that is actually is used as the vehicle for heating the home. So it's like a forced air heating system, but the air that's warmed and sent out to the rooms is always fresh. So that is a system. We've implemented it in a number of homes, and it works well, but there's definitely some I guess room for improvement and evolution. And we're continuing to kind of look at it and evolve it as a system. But if you're curious about that, we have a few we have some information we can pass forward about that if you'd like to have it on your radar.
And
Yeah,
that's for the cold climate?
Yeah, Cold Climate Housing Research Center. By the way, if you ever have the opportunity, while in Fairbanks, the center itself is located there. They have a lot of different demonstrations that are available. If you visit that site and talk to some of their staff members. And I don't know, Haley, if you want to give anybody an idea how they might be able to see actually some of these kind of systems operating.
Yeah, if for people who may not be able to visit Fairbanks, we do have some videos on YouTube that cover some of this, like the Breathe system in particular I'm thinking of, but also wall systems we've worked with, and we have some ventilation videos, more general ventilation videos. But if you are interested in visiting, the only change, we used to be very open to the public, but with COVID, we just need some advance notice. So if you're going to be in the area, reach out to our admin staff, maybe like with a week in advance, and we can get something set up. So.
Now, the other thing that you brought up was things such as mold, and we at Alaska Native Tribal Health are very concerned about those types of issues, because what we've seen, as I indicated earlier, is we're seeing hospitalization of infants and elders based on inadequate ventilation and or uneven heating within homes, which results in a hot space and a cold space within the home and within the housing envelope, and it ends up with moisture accumulating in the cooler areas or the colder areas of the home, where you get, again, because of that, you get things like mold. It is very clear that if you have a respiratory issue, it's going to be a problem if you're in that kind of housing envelope. And we have to address that, or otherwise there will be long-term health problems. And that also relates, as was mentioned, to things such as wood stoves that are not properly ventilated or they're leaky. And so there's a number of issues, and that's one of the reasons why that one page, or not one page, but advisory to home builders and architectural designers, if you will, of homes was being, that advisory was being put together by, as Haley mentioned earlier.
Hey, Mike.
Hello, how you doing, Eric?
Hey, how are you doing? I just like to chime in real quick about I know Peter Vaughn's a representative for ABCP RHA, but he's actually in Anchorage in the airport heading to Bethel right now. So he's been trying to chime in, but he's just, you know, waiting in line at the airport and coming into town. So that he's not available. But I'd like to chime in on a little aspect. I used to work in housing for some time. I worked for ABCP Housing for a little while, but something I'd like to see would be more training courses offered to new home buyers. It's similar to applying for a job. You know, you apply for a job, you get hired, you get the job, and then you require training to adequately perform your duties. The same thing I feel needs to be done for people that get selected for these houses. They need to get an extensive training course on how to maintain their home. You know, you can be eligible for a home, but you can get it, but really in reality, you might not be qualified to operate and maintain a home. It's like going from driving a old beat up 2-door Toyota from 1980, and then the next day you're given a Porsche that's cost $500,000. The maintenance for these two types of different vehicles are going to be very different. So you're talking about people that come from small homes with no running water, a honey bucket, inadequate electricity and everything. Then you take those folks and you put them in a $500,000 home, and you don't provide the adequate training to maintain that house, or any house, you know, then you start encountering mold issues and you start encountering misconceptions of what ABCP is supposed to be doing, what the home buyer is supposed to be doing. Extensive training courses for new home buyers out here in the region, I think, would be a great a resource for people like Stephen that have just moved in, so they can understand what the requirements are for things like that. When I worked at housing, I understand that wasn't the case. There was some maintenance help, but an extensive course to teach you the ins and outs of your house, the foundation, the pipes, where the wiring is, where the roof joins, where, you know, how your house was selected for the land, what to expect in the future. Maybe your house might sink, and then, you know, what can we do to alleviate situations like Stephen's situation, where I have seen puddles start forming under homes, and it's horrible because, you know, that's your home, that's your palace, and you have a big puddle under your house and you can't do anything about it except fill it in, and all that does is turn that into like a mucky mud, and it's not safe and it's not healthy. But, you know, what can we do to alleviate those type of things? But I think extensive training course for individuals that have acquired housing, to know the ins and outs, know where each nail is and know where everything is, and know how to maintain this house comfortably and understand, so they can reassure themselves and be confident. You know, there's nothing worse than worrying about your house, wondering if this is going to happen or if that's going to happen or if this will happen. You know, that's where you live with your children, your wife, your family. That's your place. So I can understand the frustrations that come out of the communities when these type of things happen, but you know, pre-planning and training and education, I think, will alleviate some of those things. So it'd be great to see that an extensive course in maintenance literacy, and even financial literacy for, how to make your payments and stress on budgeting for the year. But I think that would alleviate some of the things that we're discussing here. Would be just a great detailed training course for new home buyers, so they can have a general understanding that this is not a daunting task, just something that we all have to do. An example I can use was there's this individual who lived in a house, and they had the same exact house. The man in one house would get up every morning, he'd take his rag and he'd run his rag through all his pipes and clean up all the sweat. And that was his first thing he did every morning before he turned on his coffee. He took a rag and wiped everything down. He understood that this would just the dew from the pipes, he understood that that would cause problems in the future. In another house, an individual wasn't as keen with maintenance as this individual was. He didn't wipe down his pipes. He didn't alleviate that. What happened was all that 20 years of moisture started dripping down, and basically the toilet fell through the floor. It was just a horrible situation for him. It was unsafe and unsanitary. But if a maintenance training course had been developed to address those type of situations and issues, and this guy could be prepared, he could have woke up every day and just wiped down his pipes every morning, and that would alleviated his situation. Thankfully, ATHC came and replaced the whole floor and everything, so they saved the day. So we're really grateful for that. But I think a really extensive training course, something like a week, or I don't know what you would feel sufficient, but to get that information out there and give these folks, a fighting chance to fight mold and air clarity. But that's just what I see is needed out here from my standpoint, from working in housing some time. I work in transportation now, but it would be great to see that, to offer a training course to these individuals so they can be confident and know what they need to do, rather than feel that unknown feeling is really not a good feeling when you're talking about your home. But I hope I'm not going to take too much time, but that's my input for that. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Eric. I just want to step in for a moment. We are scheduled to end at 12 noon. That's in 3 minutes. And we still have a couple of more action plan tasks to review. Do we want to end at 12, or do we want to extend so that we can finish going through these last couple of action items? And also we want to think about when this group might meet again. A number of the other working groups are choosing to meet quarterly and schedule their next meeting maybe in the December-January timeframe. So while we still have everybody, I wanted to put that out because clearly we have a lot of great discussion and ideas that we're sharing today. And we will have more to do after this conversation. So 2 things. First of all, do we want to end in 2 minutes and schedule our next meeting generally, or extend?
I personally, I would stay on the line and give the courtesy to people who have yet something to say. That's just me.
I certainly would agree that anyone who wants to add something to this conversation as it now exists, we would extend for as long as that needs to happen. So.
Okay, then I propose that if those of you who have other things going on and need to get off at 12 noon, thank you very much for joining us. And I think we do want to keep the conversation going and think about bringing the group together again on a somewhat regular basis, more than once a year, because clearly there's a lot to talk about. And with that, I will give it back to you, Mike, to talk about our remaining tasks and lead us through. I did, for those of you who have not been watching my screen share, take Eric's comments, and I added another task just above task D, which is the home ownership, financial education, to specifically focus on home maintenance education. And I don't, so we can talk about whether that should be combined into D or a separate thing, in which case, you know, who would be the leadership and what are the next steps. So thank you.
Well, I would certainly say that, Eric, you've hit on something that I think that people certainly wholeheartedly agree with you. If you're not prepared, or basically, as you said, you don't want to buy a Mercedes Benz and not understand exactly how to keep it up, or any kind of something as important as your home requires a lot of knowledge about how things work. And we've seen this, for example, in air handling systems in homes that people have designed thinking that that's going to work just great. Well, then the homeowner sees that they're actually encouraging cool air to be entering the home. They think of that as losing the efficiency of the home, so they basically override it, and that causes some of these issues. And it's just because of lack of understanding of how these systems might work. So I absolutely believe that would be an important part of increased home ownership. Anybody else have any comments regarding that point?
I do. This is Andrea with the Kuskokwim Corporation. So I wrote in the comments about a project that we have going using Middle Kuskokwim wood, and we received a Wood Innovations grant to develop this project, which is underway now. As we think about designs of houses, and this is something I mentioned yesterday in the energy session, is there are a lot of smart people working on these projects. I would caution as we move forward to not get crazy because this is the best technology and, oh, wouldn't this be really cool to have a project? To definitely work with the communities and work with the people receiving these types of projects so that it is within their ability to maintain. So it's the flip side of the training. Absolutely, people should know how to maintain their homes, but we also shouldn't be putting in technologies so advanced and treating our communities like these test cases. I mean, that's where Cold Climate Housing Research's campus comes in, right? That's where they're testing these things. We shouldn't be testing these technologies in our communities and basically saddling our families without any training with the obligation to maintain something that they have not been prepared for. So it's a two-sided coin. Yes, absolutely, there needs to be training, and that's definitely a part of our project, is training every step of the way. And then with our regional economic and training center that we're working on in Antioch as well, a lot of those home type courses, maintaining your current systems, maintaining village systems, financial health, all of those things are a part of it. But again, really working with the communities and with organizations like Bob's, you have to work in conjunction. It can't just be, oh, this is a really cool, really technologically advanced project. Let's put this into action. There has to be a give and take. And when we talk about bringing solutions to our communities, we find that often the simplest solutions are the best ones, are the ones that are wanted. They don't want state-of-the-art systems that are going to cost them a bunch of money to maintain, that they're not going to be able to maintain. They want the simplest solution. And in our region, that's why we're looking at using our local timber to solve a lot of these problems, because when we look in our communities, it's those three-sided log cabins that have withstood the test of time. And so how can we marry that with some of these modern technologies? So I just urge everybody, while there are so many great ideas and wouldn't it be cool to do these projects in rural Alaska, we also need to be mindful that we're not saddling a family or a community or a tribe with something that is just not realistic to maintain. So thank you everybody for the discussion.
I have a question. Speaking of saddling communities with something that's difficult to maintain. I've heard that part of the procurement policy for building homes can sometimes require the lowest bidder, which has, I think, in some situations resulted in a lot of water and sewer infrastructure that is built with parts that are discontinued and very difficult to replace. I don't know if anyone else has, this is just something that I've heard. I don't know if anyone has any firsthand experience with that.
Well, I can tell you that we do know that if the home builder is contracting, or if you're contracting work out, oftentimes to contractors that are unfamiliar with the types of systems that are operating in communities, we've run across at ANTHC the types of systems that are being built in the homes we can't connect. For example, they simply aren't proper for the type of system that is in the community. So that has happened, and sometimes that is because they simply haven't had, they didn't budget enough money to basically connect water and sewer to the home, or they had it in a way that it was designed so that it would automatically fail. So there is a lot of that far from a water and sewer standpoint. One example that applies to the Yukon-Kuskokwim region is we find a lot of warming permafrost there. And so if you are building a home with a rigid sewer or water line that doesn't allow flexibility, you oftentimes have a failure before you even get started, because once we connect the home, the shift in the home's foundation, or as far as that's concerned, the pipes movement itself, because of changing elevation from permafrost melt, it'll immediately rip the pipe off. So we've designed a flexible type of connection, but the home builder's got to be aware of that in order to use it, or otherwise it won't work. So there is a need for some of those things. Okay, anybody else? I don't want to cut anybody off. Some excellent points. And let's see, where are we, Heather, as far as our next action item? Let's see.
So our remaining action items, we have this home maintenance education now, and do we want to have that as a separate item from the home ownership financial education? Our next previous plan task was provide home ownership financial education to position YK residents to apply for and purchase a home. ABCP Housing had a home ownership education program, including credit education, and could potentially reinstate it.
Yeah.
CVRF has a program.
Can I just add on to that, please?
Go ahead.
We try to leverage the resources that are already out there. So Alaska Housing has a great program, and it's all online. So if one of our homeowners actually uses an Alaska Housing rural loan, they have to sign on to this course. And I forget how long the course is, but it's part of the qualifying for this rural loan program. And it goes over financial literacy. It doesn't probably talk about home maintenance as much as needs to. But us as a contractor, as a licensed endorsed contractor, we have a 1-year obligation to repair for workmanship. So in the course of that year, after the home's built and delivered, we're developing this training because every village for sewer and water and every house, because a homeowner is choosing their equipment, is different. You know, in Chivac, they really wanted Toyo because people understood Toyos, but it does present that uneven heating, especially in a bigger home. But in Tuksuk, they wanted baseboard boilers. So it provided us with a little more even heat, but it's gonna require some training to the homeowner because it's now boiler maintenance. It's gotta happen. So as a builder, we have that responsibility to facilitate it, either do it ourselves or find someone to do it. Fortunately, we have a service center in all of our communities, and we're going to make that part of our vocational training is that we already do Toyos, but we're going to extend that to boilers. And then we're going to rely heavily on the lenders to help with the education of finance and maybe include some maintenance, some standard maintenance stuff. Because this is all new and it's really unfair for the housing authority because their product has changed from where they were doing a rent type scenario and then it changed to rent to own. And so it's really hard to introduce a product out there and it changes and the audience doesn't really know that it's changed. So there's some disconnects there about who's required to do what. And that's part of our challenge too. Now, if they lived in an ABCP home where maintenance was part of that house, they're not aware that they're required to do this stuff now. And it's, you know, it's a challenge for us and it's a challenge for the housing authority, of course. And the challenge for the housing authority is the same thing that we're seeing when a village corporation gives a piece of land to a homeowner, and just because it's surveyed and it's transferred doesn't mean that it's buildable or it's in alignment for sewer and water or electric's not going to cost $100,000 to bring to the site. And a lot of times it's the same thing when it's your village rotation for housing and ABCP says, we need a place to build you 2, 3, 4 houses and they get a site. It doesn't often mean it's the best site for construction. It's just the ones that were available at that time. And that work is really not been defined as whose job or whose role is it. And that's what we're finding as we venture into this private housing is there are a lot of roles out there that don't belong to anybody. And it's really unfair, unfortunately, to the housing authority. And it's unfair to the tribes because they don't understand that. So we found ourselves being that middle ground. And recently the Denali Commission has put a grant out there for somebody to write a guide about how to do this. And we're looking at that opportunity now to do that, but it's a really tough thing to do, to assign those duties or roles to somebody. They're needed and they're required, and it's important, but it's a tough undertaking. Okay, sorry.
Well, Bob, that is an excellent point. I mean, if you were talking about the normal model of home ownership, someone would select a lot as opposed to be given a lot, which may or may not be suitable. So it really does start with, you know, where are you going to put homes and how is that going to relate to the cost of the infrastructure to support them? And how does it affect foundation stability? There are so many issues, but you know, everything over the years that I've seen, you sometimes start with the problem, and that is putting a home in a place where it really isn't suitable for a home. But it's the only land available, or it's the only property that's actually being offered to the housing authority or whomever's building. So it really is a big issue as to suitability and how services can be provided wherever that's located in relation to utilities such as water and sewer, or electricity, or all kinds of other issues.
Yeah, I think another point I'd like to make before I forget this train of thought is we're finding now one of the most valuable things I think that we can bring to the table is this in-between role and try to help facilitate the ability for this to happen. I mean, when we go and help the village coordinate their land for housing, even though we're working for 1 or 2 houses, we never lose sight that if we survey these 10 properties, now they're in alignment for the housing authority as well, because we take those things into account. They're in alignment for services, sewer and water, electric, they're surveyed, they're ready to go. So we help them. Maybe one family steps up and say, I'm gonna go ahead and take a chance and build this house. We go in there and do this work, we create a bigger scope. Now, when that's that village's rotation for the housing authority, they're ready. And that's a bigger role that we're able to do or take part in anyway. We don't do it all. And the construction piece is just something we were forced to do as part of proving that this was possible. We're not the authority on that, you know. There's other organizations like Rural Cap. They've got the ability and they serve a broader audience, all of Alaska. We're focusing on 20 villages. They've got the ability to help there too for construction. So if people are saying, well, that's good for CBRF communities, but what about us? There's another resource there. They can provide that construction piece as well. As I mentioned, IRT is another resource if somebody's willing to do the project planning.
Okay, so any other comments on that issue? I think moving on, actually, this kind of relates to this whole discussion, and we see where we were talking about securing equipment and training for leveling homes. That really relates to the home site and the foundation, the type of foundation selected for that site. It's really just a piece of the bigger problem we're talking about. And it can, if you pick a bad site, you've already got a problem, and you're going to have to deal with these issues of leveling and trying to make it stable as you can.
Sorry, I hate to be the only one that keeps talking here, but every time you bring up a point, I'm like, man, we've done that or we've been involved in it. And this house leveling and this 504 grant, it's a really good opportunity. It's a good opportunity for economic development, either the tribe, the city, the corporation, or an industrious individual in that community could help a resident, a homeowner apply for this grant. And it's really simple to do. Rural Cap has a dedicated person to receive these applications, and so do we at CVRF. Kira is a loan packager for USDA. But we could help people understand what do you got to do. And it's really, really simple. You apply for it. You have to provide a scope of work, which is basically, this is what it costs. This is what it's going to take to do it. And submit it with your application. And then you do it. And the bottom line is every one of our villages most of every one of them, have houses that require leveling. It's just the nature of where they were built. You know, majority of them are on pad and post. And there's a lot of opportunity there for this kind of thing to get done. So if it's not CVRF, we do offer this. We've done 2 of these grants and people received money and we went and we leveled it. We did it just to understand how to do it and if it was possible. And we found out it's really easy and it's very possible. And I think if we have the opportunity to expand and grow on this, we're looking to make it a youth type, a young, maybe a OJT type training scenario within our communities, I think has the biggest possibility for growth.
What other comments do we have out there? Please speak up. I can see there are a number of notes being provided, and anybody have anything to say? Okay. Well, we're at the point, Heather, if you will remind me, that we're at now the point of indicators of success. And I think we had talked about this prior to our convening, that we probably weren't going to be able to get into all the indicators at this session, but that we should follow up and have another discussion at our next session about what are these indicators? Who has, in other words, who has the data that can tell us whether we are being successful? And we have a lot of anecdotal information. We have some data, obviously, we could share, but I don't know that we've spent the effort yet to collect that data and be able to share it with the group. And I know that in ANTHC's case, they have an estimate of, for example, served and unserved homes, served and unserved communities. I'm assuming Village Safe Water has the same or something similar for the sanitation question, for example. But I think it's going to take us a little more effort and probably another level of discussion as we look at these indicators of success. Any comments from anyone in the group? I see number of homes with sewer and water infrastructure, number of residents who own homes. All this is going to, I'm assuming that it's not going to be able to be pulled directly off the shelf, but we'll have to actually do a little work to get that data.
Hey, Mike, this is Shelley. Can I offer up something?
Yes.
And I'm coming really late to the party here because we were having an equally awesome discussion with the communications folks, but there's too many good things.
It's a good thing, yeah.
It is so good. I would just offer, maybe in the interest of time, so you folks can like grab a snack and also be able to join us at 1:30, which we would really, really love to have your participation in the second portion of today. That I mentioned this, I think, in Energy and Education Workforce Development yesterday, that AVCP is really working hard to hire on a full-time economic development coordinator that will broadly oversee implementation of the CEDS and the different moving parts. Part of that structure will include, and that capacity will include data specialist or 1 or 2. So I think if Clarence were on, he could give us the full details, but I think the idea is that there needs to be like a dedicated human or humans that are looking at not just housing and water and sewer infrastructure indicators, but also what have we said for communications and what have we said for transportation? And there may be some synergy among the different pieces. So this is maybe a long way of saying that maybe this group doesn't have to land on anything final or try to make progress on this today, that we will have some additional capacity to do that. And I just wonder if you guys would be interested in, last year, we brought all of you back together again in December. The communications group just decided, I know that sounds like tomorrow, the communications group just decided that they were going to reconvene probably in December to continue their conversation. So maybe there's some interest there and starting to put some teeth on what's available or not available related to these indicators. And we could more fully flesh those out in a second, kind of a part 2 2021 conversation. So just a couple of thoughts.
Well, having participated in that December discussion, I thought it was very useful. I would hope, whether December worked for everyone or not, but I think it would be great if we could not wait, multiple months before we continue to look at the indicators as part of this discussion, and additional information that may be available in the other areas of the action plan too. And we at Shelley, one of the things that Bob brought up and some other of the presentations brought up, and that is we are all waiting to see what happens with the infrastructure bill. And that may change all of this.
100%.
Yeah, so in December, that should be clear, I would hope. And that might be very useful for us to have a conversation at that point.
Yeah, I think same. Yeah, same thread across different groups. And we just have, I did advertise, Mike, by the way, that we've got Senator Murkowski's staff joining us for the transportation conversation this afternoon. And I'll make that announcement here too, folks. I don't want to put one working group against the other for the afternoon, but Senator Murkowski's, all Mike's doing, Mike connected us all, and as an opportunity for Senator Murkowski's staff is going to do a briefing on the infrastructure package as part of the transportation discussion later. And then they'll just sort of listen in on what is being surfaced as priorities in the YK that are transportation related. But it does seem like the opportunity to like poke a little bit further and say, well, what about communications and what about housing related and other stuff?
Yeah, I mean, everything here that we've been talking about will be affected by it. And I know that the senator was aware of a lot of the issues we're talking about when she was actually drafting a lot of that infrastructure bill. To me, I hope that the senator's staff can see all the work that's gone into these discussions and give us some feedback on what might be possible. So, yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, so we can wait for an hour and have some lunch and then, yes, okay. And
we're not going to make you work through lunch.
Okay.
And once again, after these meetings, we'll be cleaning up these notes a little bit. And anyone who presented today, if there are any materials or slides that you want to share, I sent my email address directly to the two people who shared their screens today with all of us. So send that to me and we'll include those with the materials that we share back out.
Thank you, Heather, for your help in this. It'd be impossible without you. And thank you for all the participation. Bob, I really appreciated hearing what CVRF is doing and all the other individuals who have contributed to this. Again, please stay involved and let's keep this going. It's a very good effort. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.